5 years ago, I parked this Honda Prelude on my mum's driveway and never touched it again. Flat tyres, moss and algae everywhere and totally dead. But today, I'm bringing it back to life and trust me, it's going to be worth it. Hello, my name's Dan and this is Dan Hughes Cars, the channel where we take forgotten cars and give them a second chance. Over the next few episodes, you'll see this Honda Prelude go from a dusty driveway ornament to a clean, road-ready, modern classic. Let's take a look at what we're working with. This isn't just any Honda Prelude, it's the Motegi edition, UK only special that Honda built as the closest thing to a Prelude Type R. It came with a 2.2 litre VTEC engine, manual gearbox and 4-wheel steering, all straight from Honda's high performance playbook. And it wears the original Motegi 5-spoke alloys, factory body kit and genuine badging. In the current market, that makes it seriously collectible. I bought this car back in 2018 while working at my local Honda dealership. One of my customers traded it in for a brand new Civic Type R. And as soon as I saw this, I knew exactly what it was, a hidden gem. Not long after buying it, I took the car on an 1,800-mile trip to Scotland around the famous North Coast 500 route. It was flawless the whole way. That trip made me fall in love with the car even more. But a few months later, the gearbox started acting up. It wouldn't go into reverse, and the only fix was a full strip and rebuild. I couldn't afford that at the time, so I parked it up, and that's where it sat for over 5 years. But I never forgot about it. This car means a lot to me, and now it's finally time to bring it back to life. With years of grime baked into every panel, the first step was a deep clean, and it was long overdue. Now freshly washed, it's time to load it up and take it to the workshop. So we're here, we've made it, car's here. Let's have a look, see what we got to do. I've already had a look, the rust on the bonnet is not too bad. This is just surface rust. We've got a few more bits of rust down the side here. So we've got a little bit bubbling up there. This whole side we're going to paint because we've got little bits of damage here. Obviously the rust on the quarter, there's another ding there in the paintwork, and the bumper is scuffed. On this side, we've not got too much to do, to be honest. It is actually in really good condition on this side, other than a good polish. Should bring it up. This wing does need painting because of this. So obviously after cleaning it, we can see exactly what we've got to do. I'm starting on the bonnet. There's surface rust creeping in along the front. It's nothing too deep yet, but if it's left untreated, it'll eventually eat through the metal. So I'm grinding it back to give us a clean surface to work from. Rust protection. Once the rust was ground back, I masked off the front bumper to protect it. Then went in with the rust converter. It soaks into the bare metal and reacts chemically, stopping the corrosion from spreading. After about 15 minutes of curing, we're ready for the next stage. Let's talk you through prepping this. We've got a bit of rust here. Now, first of all, we've got to plug this in. Get the angle grinder. Safety first. Earplugs. Obviously has to be done. And goggles. As I began grinding back the surface, I quickly noticed I wasn't just removing paint. I was cutting through body filler. This usually means the area had been previously repaired, likely after some damage or corrosion in the past. And while body filler itself isn't a problem, it can sometimes trap moisture underneath if not applied properly, leading to rust returning over time. The next day, I got straight into sanding. I started with a 320 grit disc to cut through all the deeper scratches and paint damage. Stuff like old birdline marks and the damage we saw earlier on the front wing. then stepped up to 400 and finally 800 grit paper to refine the surface and remove any prep marks from the previous stages. Oh dear, what's happened here? This come wobbly. When I was on a road trip, I stuck it down with some gaffer tape. Got to clean all that off. Vitally important is a cup of tea. After my tea, I got back to work removing the leftover adhesive from the gaffer tape on the windscreen. I started with a small blade, keeping the surface wet to avoid scratching the paint. Then followed up with paint thinners on a cloth to lift the remaining residue. Since thinners can be harsh, I made sure I wore thick rubber gloves for protection. Hello. Right, so we're going to do the Prelude badge. Look at the state of that pen. Seriously? What is that? When we put this back on, we want it to be in the same position. In order to do that, I laid down masking tape to create a template. Then with my pen, marked the exact position for each letter. That way, when the time comes to reinstall them, they'll line up perfectly, just like factory. With the badges out of the way, it's time to prep the rear bumper. Just like the other panels, I'm working through the sanding grits from coarse to fine, making sure every section is evenly keyed. I finish off with a grey Scotch pad to get into all the edges and contours the DA can't reach. Next up, I'm back on the bonnet using a 1K stopper, a fine filler designed for tackling small imperfections like stone chips. I carefully worked my way across the panel, filling each one. Once it had cured, I wet sanded the surface smooth with 800 grit to blend everything back in. With the panels prepped, it was time to turn my attention to the side skirt. To remove them, I had to jack the car up on each side and unscrew a T20 bolt hidden inside the wheel arch. Then it was a case of popping out the plastic trim clips underneath, or rather snapping most of them, as they turned brittle with age. I've ordered replacements, of course. With the skirts off, I brought them into the workshop for a closer look, and no surprise, both had cracks from someone jacking up the car in the wrong place. Out came the plastic welder. I started melting the cracks back together, which was slow, delicate work, but essential if they're going to last. Once the welds had cooled, I moved on to smoothing everything out. Starting with 80 grit on the DA to level the surface, followed by 180 and finishing with 320 to blend it all in. On the reverse side, we added mesh reinforcement with adhesive to give the repair more strength. And finally, with the cracks fixed and the shape looking good, I sanded down the entire skirts to prep them for paint. With the skirts out the way, it was time to start the filler work. I handled the prep, feathering back the paint around each repair with 180 grit on the DA to give the filler a clean edge to bite into. For the rear quarter, which had seen a previous repair, my mate Phil, who's a professional, applied a skim of fiberglass filler to give the area strength. Once that had cured, I knocked it back using a grinder to level the surface, then refined it further with the DA. Phil then stepped back in to apply the main body filler. Once that had set, he shaped it using 180 grit by hand, getting the contours spot on. To check the finish, he dusted the area with a black guide coat. That fine powder settles into low spots or sanding marks, making imperfections easy to spot before finishing with 320 grit. With the panels sanded, smoothed and the cracks repaired, the Prelude is finally ready for paint. But as with most things in life, nothing ever goes exactly to plan. Next time, the paint goes on and something goes wrong. So if you're enjoying the resurrection of this long forgotten Prelude, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe and join me next week as we finally get some colour on this thing.